That night I was just frying chicken, the smell of garlic butter still clinging to my hands when his shoes slammed against the kitchen floor. "Who told you to touch my kitchen?" Carl's voice cut through the air. I'm 32, not a child. But the entire Ridgepoint house suddenly contracted like a locked box. I thought I just needed to swallow my pride to get through dinner. Carl didn't know that right as he raised his hand. Someone had rung the doorbell, and everything I'd quietly prepared for 3 months, the statements, the recordings, the witness testimonies, was waiting behind that door. My name is Natalie Brooks, and at 32, I never imagined I'd be back in my mother's house, watching my stepfather turn a kitchen into a battlefield. 3 months ago, budget cuts at West Haven Children's Center left me scrambling for stability. The night shift nursing job I'd held for 5 years vanished with a corporate email and a 2-week severance. Mom, Elaine Benton now, not Brooks anymore, offered the guest room with that nervous smile she'd perfected since marrying Carl 8 years ago. "Just until you get back on your feet, honey," she'd said, not meeting my eyes. Carl made the rules clear from day one: his house, his kitchen, his television remote. I paid rent, $500 a month, which he pocketed immediately, bought groceries, cleaned, cooked when permitted. The refrigerator required permission to open after 9 p.m. The washer ran only on his schedule. Even the mail got sorted through his hands first. "You're lucky I let you stay," he'd remind me daily, usually while I scrubbed dishes from the dinner I'd prepared. A grown woman, unemployed, crawling back home. What would your father think? Dad had been dead 10 years. Carl knew exactly what knife to twist. The kitchen became our primary battleground. I'd worked doubles and triples in hospital wards, managed medication schedules for dozens of patients, but here I couldn't toast bread without authorization. One Tuesday, I made pasta salad for Mom's book club. Carl found me chopping celery at 2 p.m. "Did I say you could use my kitchen?" "Mom asked me to." "Your mother doesn't make decisions about my property." He stood too close, tobacco breath hot on my neck. "Everything in this house goes through me. Everything." That night, I started documenting. A simple notebook at first. Dates, times, exact quotes, the way he'd slam cabinets when I entered the room, how he'd stand in the doorway, blocking my exit while lecturing about respect and gratitude, the grocery receipts he'd demand, circling items he deemed unnecessary with red pen. Mrs. Keating next door heard the worst of it. Paper-thin walls in these Ridgepoint row houses meant privacy was fiction. She'd catch me getting mail some mornings, touch my arm gently. "Honey, I heard the shouting last night. You okay?" "Fine, Mrs. Keating, just a disagreement about dinner." She'd nod, knowing. She'd been documenting too, though I wouldn't learn that until later. The financial control ran deeper than house rules. Mom's pension, Dad's life insurance payout, her savings, all managed by Carl through some investment firm he'd created, Benton Homeworks LLC, incorporated 3 months after their wedding. Mom signed papers she didn't understand, trusted her new husband to handle the complex finances that overwhelmed her after Dad's death. "Carl knows about these things," she'd say when I asked about their retirement planning. "He has experience." Experience in control, maybe. I watched him review her credit card statements, questioning every purchase. A new blouse meant an hour-long interrogation. Coffee with friends required detailed expense reports. Meanwhile, his workshop accumulated thousands in power tools, funded by what he called household improvements. The notebook evolved into something more sophisticated, photos of bruises when he'd grab my arm, yanking me away from his stove, audio recordings on my phone, triggered whenever I entered the kitchen, date-stamped evidence of every threat, every controlling demand, every financial manipulation I could document without violating privacy laws. "You're nothing without this roof over your head," he said one night, after I'd made Mom her favorite soup. She had a cold, could barely eat, but Carl focused only on my transgression of using his kitchen without permission. Remember that. I did remember. I remembered everything, and I started planning for the day when remembering would become reckoning. The cracks in Carl's foundation started showing themselves in old paperwork. I found the first clue while helping Mom organize her closet. A manila folder stuffed behind winter coats, filled with documents she'd signed over the years. Investment authorizations, power of attorney forms, wire transfer receipts to Benton Homeworks LLC. "Mom, what's this LLC?" I asked one afternoon while Carl was at his shop. "Oh, that's Carl's business thing, for taxes," he said. "Makes everything simpler." She waved her hand dismissively, but her eyes darted toward the door. "Don't mention it to him. He doesn't like me going through those papers." The company was registered 3 months after Dad's funeral. I remembered that time. Mom, drowning in grief, barely able to function. Carl swooping in with flowers and sympathy, offering to handle the overwhelming financial decisions. She'd been grateful then, relieved. At West Haven, before the layoffs, I'd become close with Samira Ortiz. She worked internal audit for Northbridge Mutual, the kind of person who could spot financial irregularities in her sleep. We'd grab coffee between shifts, and I'd listen to her stories about fraud investigations, embezzlement schemes, the paper trails people thought they'd hidden. "The thing about financial abuse," Samira told me once, not knowing how relevant her words were, "is that perpetrators always think they're smarter than they are. They leave breadcrumbs everywhere." After finding those documents, I called her. I need advice, hypothetically, if someone were moving money from a joint account to a private LLC without the other person's real understanding. That's not hypothetical, is it? Samira's voice was gentle but firm. "Listen, you need to document everything. Bank statements, wire transfers, incorporation papers. Get copies, not originals. Never take anything that could be considered theft." She taught me how to photograph documents properly. Good lighting, clear focus, all 4 corners visible. How to organize evidence chronologically. What would hold up legally versus what was just suspicious. The pattern became clear as I dug deeper. Every month, automatic transfers from Mom's pension and savings accounts to Benton Homeworks LLC. The amounts varied. $2,000 here, $3,500 there, always just under the threshold that would trigger bank notifications. The LLC then paid for Carl's workshop equipment, his truck payments, even a boat Mom didn't know existed. "Your mom needs to know," Samira said after reviewing what I'd gathered. "She won't believe it, or worse, she'll confront him, and he'll destroy everything. Then you build an airtight case first, one that protects her whether she cooperates or not." I started spending my few free hours at Ridgepoint Community Legal Center, where volunteer lawyers offered guidance on elder financial abuse cases. The law was complex. Mom wasn't technically elderly at 64, but the pattern of control and deception fit other statutes. "If you can prove coercion and financial manipulation," one lawyer explained, "especially combined with documented domestic abuse patterns, you can petition for asset freezing and investigation. But you need substantial evidence." Substantial evidence. I thought about Dad, how he'd worked 2 jobs to build Mom's retirement security, how he'd made me promise to look after her. Carl had inserted himself into that promise like a parasite, feeding off what Dad had built. The Thursday night when I found the loan documents was when my documentation turned from defensive to offensive. Mom had apparently co-signed for a $50,000 home equity loan. The money went straight to Benton Homeworks LLC for property improvements. Our roof still leaked, the bathroom faucet still dripped, but Carl's workshop had a new concrete floor and industrial equipment that could outfit a professional contractor. Building something special. He'd bragged to his buddies when they came over for beer. Got big plans for this business. Plans funded by my mother's future, signed away in confusion and trust. I mapped every transaction, creating a financial timeline that showed the systematic draining of Mom's assets. The Excel spreadsheet grew to dozens of tabs: bank records, LLC filings, equipment purchases, loan documents. Samira reviewed it, suggesting additions, ensuring everything was legally obtained and properly cataloged. "This is solid," she said, "but you need to protect yourself too. This kind of confrontation, it can escalate." Escalate. Such a clinical word for what I knew was coming. Carl's control was about to be challenged, and controlled men don't surrender power quietly. I started recording more aggressively, keeping my phone ready, building an audio library of his threats and tantrums. The final piece came when I found the insurance policies. Carl had taken out 3 separate life insurance policies on Mom, himself as sole beneficiary. She didn't know they existed. That night, listening to him berate her for buying name-brand butter instead of generic, I made my decision. This ended now, not with confrontation, but with calculated, documented, legally bulletproof revenge. The first time Carl put his hands on me, I'd been home for 6 weeks. A 16-hour shift at my new part-time clinic job left me exhausted. But Mom needed dinner. Her arthritis was flaring. She could barely hold a fork, let alone cook. I made her favorite: rosemary chicken with mashed potatoes. Nothing fancy. Carl arrived home earlier than expected. I heard his truck door slam, those heavy boots on the porch that always made my chest tighten. He found me plating Mom's food. "What did I tell you about my kitchen?" "Mom needs to eat. She's in pain." The shove came fast, his palm flat against my shoulder, sending me backward into the counter. The plate shattered on the floor. Mom appeared in the doorway, eyes wide, hands trembling. "Carl, please, she was just helping me." "Stay out of this, Elaine." He didn't look at her, kept his eyes locked on mine. "Your daughter needs to learn respect." My shoulder throbbed where he'd pushed me. A bruise would bloom there by morning. I knew the progression well from my nursing training. First red, then purple. Finally that sick yellow-green of healing. Evidence. "Don't make this bigger than it is," Mom whispered later, helping me clean the broken plate. "He's just stressed about work." I didn't argue. Instead, I went to my room and photographed the red mark on my shoulder, added it to my growing file, wrote down the time, 7:43 p.m., the date, what was said, what Mom witnessed. Samira had coached me on documentation after violence. Photos immediately, then every day as bruises develop, multiple angles, good lighting, include something for scale, a ruler, a coin. Write everything down while it's fresh. Don't editorialize, just facts. Facts. The fact was, Carl had assaulted me. The fact was, it would escalate. 2 days later, I installed a doorbell camera without telling anyone. The kit cost $80, money I couldn't spare but couldn't not spend. The angle captured the front porch and, crucially, showed directly into the kitchen through the window. Motion activated, cloud storage included. I also started keeping my phone recording whenever I was in common areas. Voice memos running in my pocket, capturing the daily degradation. Worthless parasite. No man wants a woman who can't even keep a job. Your father would be ashamed. Each insult meticulously cataloged, filed, backed up to 3 different cloud services. The escalation pattern was textbook: emotional abuse to physical intimidation to actual violence. The next incident came 2 weeks later. I'd made tea for Mom and myself. Carl grabbed my wrist, twisted it back until I dropped the cup. Hot liquid splashed across my feet. "Clean it up," he said, "and remember whose house you're in." My wrist swelled. I documented everything: photos, timestamps, the sound recording that caught his words, and my sharp intake of breath from pain. The clinic doctor who treated me the next day noted the injury was consistent with forceful grabbing and twisting. I kept that paperwork too. Mrs. Keating started checking on me more frequently. "I heard something break last night," she'd say, around 10:15. She was keeping her own log. I realized times, dates, sounds of violence through thin walls. When I finally asked her directly, she showed me her notebook. "Been writing it down for weeks. Honey, my late husband was a cop. I know the signs, know what documentation matters." She squeezed my hand. "You're building a case, aren't you?" "I can't let this continue." "Good. I'll be your witness, whatever you need." Marcus Hale, the neighborhood security guard, had noticed too. He'd started making extra rounds past our house, especially on nights when Carl's truck was in the driveway. He'd wave when he saw me at the window. A silent check-in. "Ma'am, I've had to log several noise complaints from this address." He told me one morning. "Shouting, sounds of disturbance. It's all in my reports. Just so you know, those reports exist." A network of witnesses, growing without Carl's knowledge. He thought his control was absolute, but the community saw. They documented. They prepared to stand with me. The worst night came after I'd received a job offer. Full-time nursing position at Riverside Medical, starting in 2 weeks. I'd been celebrating quietly with Mom when Carl overhead. "You're not taking that job." "Excuse me?" "You pay rent here. You contribute. You don't get to just leave when things get stable." "It's my life, Carl." That's when he grabbed my arm, fingers digging deep enough to leave 4 distinct bruises. He pushed me against the wall, his face inches from mine. "Nothing about your life is yours while you're under my roof." My phone captured all of it. So did the doorbell camera through the kitchen window. Mrs. Keating heard it through the walls. Wrote it down. Marcus logged the disturbance at 10:17 p.m. That night, I didn't just document, I acted. I called the Ridgepoint Community Legal Center, scheduled an emergency appointment, started the paperwork for a protective order, compiled everything, photos, recordings, witness statements, into a comprehensive file. "This is one of the most thoroughly documented cases I've seen," the volunteer lawyer said, reviewing my evidence. "You've done everything right. We can file for an emergency protective order and start criminal proceedings." "Not yet," I said. "There's more I need to do first, to protect my mother's assets." The lawyer understood. "Build your complete case, but don't wait too long. Violence escalates." I knew, but I also knew Carl's destruction went beyond bruises. I needed to save more than just myself. The paper trail of Carl's financial crimes ran deeper than I'd imagined. With Samira's guidance, I learned to read between the lines of public records. Benton Homeworks LLC wasn't just draining Mom's accounts. It was a sophisticated funnel for multiple streams of money that never touched a single hammer or nail. "Look at this," Samira said, pulling up the business registry on her laptop during one of our coffee meetings. "Your stepfather listed the business as Home Improvement and Renovation Services, but there's no contractor's license on file, no permits pulled, no business insurance. So it's completely fraudulent. It's a shell. Watch." She cross-referenced the LLC's registered address with tax records. "The business address is a P.O. box, but he's claiming home office deductions on a property that's in your mother's name. He's literally writing off her house as his business expense while draining her accounts to fund it." The revelation sent me back to Mom's files with fresh eyes. I found receipts for business equipment that included a $15,000 zero-turn mower for a company that supposedly did interior renovations, a professional table saw costing $8,000, paid from Mom's savings, client entertainment expenses at sports bars and golf courses, all traced back to her pension funds. The Community Legal Center put me in touch with a forensic accountant who volunteered twice monthly. She reviewed my spreadsheets with the kind of attention that made me understand why financial crimes eventually unravel. "This transfer here," she pointed to a $30,000 movement from Mom's retirement account. "It's labeled as a loan to the LLC, but there's no loan agreement, no repayment terms. That's not a loan, it's theft." "Can we prove that?" "With what you've gathered? Absolutely. But there's more." She pulled up another document. "Your mother's signature on these transfers. Look closely." I compared them to Mom's actual signature on older documents. The difference was subtle but clear. The E in Elaine was wrong, the slant inconsistent. "He's forging some of these," I breathed. "Appears so. You need to get your mother to a bank immediately to flag these transactions." But Mom wasn't ready to see what Carl was. Every time I tried to broach the subject, she'd shut down. "He takes care of the finances, honey. It's too complicated for me." The same learned helplessness Carl had cultivated for years. So I went around her. The senior advocacy department at Ridgepoint Credit Union, where Mom's main accounts were held, had protocols for suspected elder financial abuse. We can flag the accounts for suspicious activity, the advocate explained. If we see patterns matching what you've documented, we can freeze transfers to that LLC pending investigation. Your mother doesn't have to initiate it. We can act on the suspicious activity itself. I provided them with transaction records, pattern analysis, the forged signatures. Within days, they'd quietly flag the accounts. The next automatic transfer to Benton Homeworks LLC would trigger their fraud department. Meanwhile, I kept building the criminal case. Carl had made a crucial mistake in his arrogance. He'd been bragging. I recorded him on the phone with his buddy Ray, laughing about how Elaine doesn't even know what she's signing, and how he'd set himself up nice for when the old lady kicks it. The insurance policies were the ugliest piece. 3 separate $100,000 policies on Mom's life, taken out over 2 years, premiums paid from her own accounts through the LLC. She'd never signed them. I had her medical records showing she wasn't even present on the dates the applications claimed she'd had physical exams. This is attempted insurance fraud at minimum, the legal center lawyer said. Combined with the documented violence and financial exploitation, we're looking at multiple felonies. I compiled everything into organized binders. Financial crimes in one, every fraudulent transfer, forged document, suspicious transaction highlighted and annotated, domestic violence in another, photos, medical records, recordings, witness statements. A third binder held the insurance fraud evidence. The Ridge County Civil Protection Unit took my preliminary filing seriously. Detective Morrison, a tall woman with kind eyes and steel in her voice, reviewed everything over 3 hours. "This is exceptional documentation," she said. "Most victims don't have a tenth of this evidence. You've built a prosecutable case." "I'm a nurse," I said simply. "Documentation saves lives." "When do you want to move forward?" "Soon, but I need to ensure my mother's remaining assets are protected first." She understood. "We can coordinate with Financial Crimes Division. When you're ready, we can execute everything simultaneously. Asset freeze, protective orders, criminal charges. He won't have time to hide anything or retaliate." We set a date, 2 weeks out, enough time to secure Mom's remaining accounts, to file the final paperwork, to ensure everything was unassailable. Carl, oblivious, continued his performance of control, screaming about grocery bills while sitting in his workshop full of stolen luxury, never knowing that every threat, every admission, every forged document had been cataloged, filed, and prepared for presentation. The USB drive containing everything, backed up in triplicate, stored in separate locations, felt like a weapon in my pocket, not for violence, but for justice. The kind that comes with handcuffs and court dates and frozen assets. "You're nothing," he told me that week, after I'd used his coffee maker without permission. A nobody going nowhere. I smiled, fingers touching the USB drive. "We'll see." The neighbors had been watching longer than I realized. Mrs. Keating showed me her notebook one evening when Carl was at his weekly poker game. Pages of dated entries, times, descriptions of sounds that carried through our shared wall. October 15th, 10:17 p.m., loud male voice, sound of something hitting wall, female crying. October 22nd, 10:20 p.m., shouting about money, male voice, "You don't deserve anything," breaking glass. November 3rd, 10:17 p.m., argument in kitchen, male threatening eviction, heavy footsteps, door slamming. "You noticed the pattern," I said, seeing the repeated 10:17 p.m. entries. "Hard not to. Your stepfather's like clockwork with his tantrums, always after the 10 o'clock news, always in the kitchen where the walls are thinnest." She adjusted her glasses. "My late husband worked domestic cases for 20 years. Taught me to document everything. Never know when someone might need a witness." Marcus Hale, the security guard, had his own records. He showed them to me during one of his rounds, pulling out his official logbook. "Every noise complaint gets logged. Company policy. I've got 17 incidents from your address in the past 2 months." He flipped through pages. "I've been noting details too. Volume, duration, specific words when I could hear them from the street. You could hear from the street? Ma'am, half the neighborhood can hear when your stepfather gets going. Old Mr. Thompson across the way asked me if he should call the police last week. The community was creating a net around Carl without him knowing. Even the mail carrier, Janet, had noticed things. That man always snatches the mail from my hands. She told me one morning, "Won't let me hand it to you or your mother. I've had to file 2 complaints about aggressive behavior. It's all documented with USPS." I started coordinating with them, gathering their statements, having them sign affidavits. The legal center helped format everything properly, witness testimonies that would hold up in court. Mrs. Keating went further. She'd been recording on her phone whenever the shouting started, standing by our shared wall. The audio was muffled but clear enough to make out Carl's threats, the crashes, my mother's pleading voice. "This one's from last Tuesday." She played a recording, Carl's voice, distorted but recognizable. "You're worthless, both of you, parasites in my house." The crash that followed made me flinch even though I remembered that night. He'd thrown Mom's favorite vase, a gift from her mother, against the wall. I learned to position myself strategically during Carl's outbursts. If I stood near the kitchen window, the doorbell camera would catch everything. If I kept my phone in my chest pocket, the recording picked up clear audio. I practiced keeping my voice level, clear, asking him to clarify his threats. "Are you saying you'll throw me out if I use your kitchen? Are you threatening to hurt me if I don't pay more rent? Can you repeat what you just said about my mother's money?" His ego made him repeat everything, usually louder, clearer, perfect for evidence. Marcus started timing his rounds to coincide with Carl's patterns. He'd park his security vehicle where the dash cam faced our house, always around 10:15 p.m. He caught Carl stumbling drunk from his truck several times, aggressively yanking the front door open, already yelling before he was inside. "If you need immediate help," Marcus told me, "I'm always on shift Thursday through Sunday nights. Response time under 2 minutes. I've already briefed my supervisor about the situation." The preparation felt like building a case for trial, which essentially it was. Detective Morrison from the Civil Protection Unit had explained the process. Once we initiated, everything would move fast. The witnesses would be interviewed immediately, their statements crucial for both protective orders and criminal charges. "Your neighbor's documentation is gold," she said. "Jury loves independent witnesses, shows pattern, premeditation, ongoing abuse." Mrs. Keating offered something else, refuge for Mom. "When this all goes down, your mother will need somewhere safe. My guest room is ready. I've already cleared it with my daughter. She's a social worker, knows the drill." The network grew. Dr. Patterson at the clinic where I worked part-time had been documenting my injuries as consistent with domestic violence in my medical records. The pharmacist at Ridgepoint Pharmacy, where I'd filled prescriptions for pain medication after Carl's assaults, had flagged my account for concerning patterns of injury. Even the bank teller, Rosa, who'd helped me open my own separate account, had made notes. "I remember you," she said when I returned for statements. "You were scared he'd find out about the account. I marked it for privacy protection. No mail to the home address. I've seen this before." By early November, I had 17 witnesses ready to testify. Their documentation spanned 3 months, hundreds of incidents, patterns impossible to deny. Carl thought he controlled the narrative inside our house, but the community had been writing their own story, one where his abuse was witnessed, recorded, undeniable. The night before everything would change, I sat with my evidence binders and USB drives, surrounded by the voices of neighbors who'd chosen to stand with me. Mrs. Keating's recordings, Marcus's logs, Janet's complaints, Rosa's concern, a chorus of people who'd refused to look away. Carl was in his workshop, probably admiring his stolen equipment. No idea that 17 witnesses were prepared to testify against him. No idea that 10:17 p.m. had become infamous in our neighborhood as the time when his control began its countdown to collapse. Tomorrow, when he'd rage about something trivial, The dishes, the lights, my existence. He'd perform for an audience he never knew existed. And this time, the law would be listening. The night everything unraveled started with garlic butter and ended with handcuffs. Mom had texted me at work that afternoon. "Carl's having his investment friends over at 8. Says we can't use the kitchen after 6. I'm so hungry, honey." My shift at the clinic was supposed to run until 11, but a scheduling error had me off by 5. I drove home thinking about Mom, 64 years old, forbidden from entering her own kitchen because Carl wanted to play big shot with his stolen money. The house felt different when I walked in, charged, like the air before lightning. Carl's truck wasn't there yet. Mom sat in the living room, looking small. "I haven't eaten since breakfast," she admitted. "That's enough, Mom." I went straight to the kitchen, pulled out the chicken breasts I'd bought, my garlic, my butter. The pans sizzled as I worked, filling the house with the scent of actual food instead of Carl's cigarettes and anger. Mom crept in, eyes worried but hopeful. "He said not to—" Let him say it to my face. I plated her food, added the green beans, the rice I'd made that morning. She ate like someone starving, because essentially she was starving for food, for dignity, for someone to stand up to the man who'd turned her life into a prison. Carl's truck roared into the driveway at 6:47. I kept cooking, making my own plate now. Heard his boots, that aggressive stride that used to make me freeze. Not tonight. "What the fuck is this?" He stood in the doorway, face already red. Behind him, I glimpsed 2 men in suits, the investment friends who were really just marks for his next con. "It's dinner," I said, not turning around. "You know, that meal humans eat?" "I told you." He stepped closer, voice dropping to that dangerous register. "No one uses my kitchen tonight." "Your kitchen?" I turned then, phone visible in my chest pocket, recording light on. The kitchen in my mother's house? The one she paid for with my father's insurance money? His hand shot out, shoving my shoulder hard enough to slam me back against the counter. The plate in my hand crashed to the floor. Mom gasped from her chair. "You ungrateful—" He raised his hand higher. The doorbell rang. Carl froze, hand still raised. The doorbell rang again, insistent. "Carl," one of his friends called from the living room. "Someone's at the door." He lowered his hand slowly, eyes promising retribution. "Clean this up. We'll discuss your attitude later." He stormed toward the front door. I heard him yanking it open, already barking. "What do you—" Silence. Then a professional voice. "Mr. Carl Benton? I'm Deputy Harrison with the Ridge County Sheriff's Office. This is Detective Morrison with the Civil Protection Unit and Mr. James Walsh from the County Financial Crimes Division. We have a warrant to search these premises and your business records." I walked to the kitchen doorway where I could see everything. Carl stood frozen as 3 officials entered, followed by 2 more deputies. His investment friends backed against the wall, eyes wide. "What is this about?" Carl's voice cracked. Detective Morrison stepped forward. "We're investigating allegations of financial fraud, elder abuse, and domestic violence. We need you to step back, sir." "This is my house." "Actually, Mr." Walsh interrupted, pulling out documents. "This house is titled to Elaine Benton, not you, and we have documentation suggesting you've been illegally transferring her assets to your LLC." The doorbell camera had caught everything. Carl shoving me, raising his hand, the plate breaking. My phone had the audio. But even better, one of Carl's investment friends had been recording on his phone, planning to video Carl's big presentation about his successful business. He'd caught the entire assault. "Sir, we're going to need you to turn around." Deputy Harrison said. "For what? I didn't do anything." Detective Morrison pulled out her tablet, showing the doorbell footage. "Assault. For starters, Mr. Benton, you have the right to remain silent." As they cuffed him, Mrs. Keating appeared at the door with her notebook and phone. "Officers, I have 3 months of documented disturbances and recordings." Marcus Hale was behind her. I have my security logs as well. Carl's face went from red to white as he realized the scope of what was happening. His investment friends were already backing toward the door, one on his phone with what sounded like a lawyer. The financial records, I said to Mr. Walsh, pulling the USB from my pocket. Everything's here. 3 years of fraud, forged signatures, illegal transfers. Mom sat frozen in her chair, watching her husband in handcuffs. I knelt beside her. It's over, Mom. He can't hurt us anymore. The house, the money. We'll get it back, all of it. They led Carl out as the neighborhood watched. Mrs. Keating had called everyone. Witnesses ready to give statements. Carl's kingdom of control collapsed in less than 10 minutes, brought down by garlic butter chicken and 3 months of meticulous documentation. The silence after they left felt like breathing after being underwater. Mom and I stood in her kitchen, truly hers for the first time in years, and I made her a new plate of food. No one, I said, will ever keep you from your own kitchen again. The doorbell camera kept recording, capturing not violence this time, but something rarer. Justice served at exactly the right temperature. The living room became a crime scene of paperwork. Detective Morrison sat across from us while Mr. Walsh from Financial Crimes spread documents across Mom's coffee table, the same table Carl had forbidden us from using without permission. Mrs. Benton. Walsh began gently. These signatures authorizing transfers to your husband's LLC, did you sign them? Mom's hands shook as she examined the papers. This one, maybe? He said it was for taxes, but these others, that's not my handwriting. We know, Morrison said. Your daughter provided comparison samples. At least 12 documents show evidence of forgery. The doorbell camera footage played on Morrison's tablet. Carl shoving me, the plate shattering, his hand raised. One of his investment friends, Ted Brenner, had already provided his phone video to the deputies. He'd been recording Carl's entrance, planning to capture the big business presentation, and instead documented assault. Mr. Brenner is cooperating fully, Morrison explained. Apparently, your husband was trying to get him to invest $100,000 in the LLC. Brenner's lawyer advised him to share everything. Mrs. Keating had brought her evidence box, 3 notebooks, her phone with 23 recordings, printed emails where she'd reported concerns to the neighborhood watch. She sat with Mom, holding her hand while giving her statement. October through December, I documented 47 incidents of yelling, threats, and what sounded like physical altercations. She told the detective. The pattern was consistent, always between 10 and 11 p.m., always escalating. Marcus Hale's security company had released all his logs to the investigation. 17 log disturbances, 3 reports of suspected domestic violence, concerns about financial exploitation of an elderly resident. I'm not elderly, Mom protested weakly. Under state law, Walsh explained. Financial abuse protections apply to vulnerable adults of any age when there's a power imbalance and documented coercion. The search of Carl's workshop had begun. Through the window, we watched deputies cataloging equipment, photographing serial numbers, matching purchases to the fraudulent transfers. One deputy emerged with boxes of receipts. Carl had kept everything, evidence of his own crimes. Your husband purchased over $200,000 in equipment through the LLC. Walsh showed Mom the calculations. All traced to your retirement accounts, pension, and a home equity loan you supposedly co-signed. $200,000? Mom's voice broke. We'll recover what we can. The equipment will be seized as evidence, then liquidated. The LLC's accounts are already frozen. Morrison pulled me aside while Mom processed everything with Mrs. Keating's support. The USB drive you provided, it's prosecutorial gold, financial crimes, domestic violence, insurance fraud. Your documentation is better than most professional investigations. I'm a nurse. Documentation is life or death. Well, your documentation just saved 2 lives, yours and your mother's. The house felt different with Carl's shadow lifted. His investment friends had fled immediately, but not before providing contact information and promising cooperation. They'd been recording conversations where Carl bragged about his foolproof system of wealth building using Mom's money. The insurance policies, I reminded Walsh. 3 policies on my mother's life. Already flagged with the insurance commission. Fraudulent applications, forged medical records. Those policies are void, and he's facing additional federal charges for insurance fraud. Mom finally spoke, voice stronger. I want it all back, everything he took. We'll file for immediate asset recovery. Walsh assured her. With this evidence, the court will likely award full restitution plus damages. A deputy returned from the workshop with a laptop. Sir, you need to see this. Carl had been keeping his own records, spreadsheets detailing every cent he'd stolen, labeled Operation Retirement. He'd planned to drain everything. Divorce Mom once she was destitute, and disappear. The files included searches for countries without extradition and how to transfer LLC assets offshore. He never planned to stop. Mom whispered, But you did stop him. Mrs., Keating said firmly, your daughter stopped him. The legal machinery moved faster than I'd expected. Emergency protective order, granted immediately. Criminal charges filed. Assault, battery, elder abuse, financial fraud, forgery. The list filled 2 pages. Asset freeze. Every account connected to Carl or his LLC locked down. Bail hearing is tomorrow. Morrison informed us. With flight risk evidence and the offshore searches, he'll likely be held. Mom and I sat in her kitchen that night, truly her kitchen now, while neighbors stopped by with support. Janet the mail carrier brought soup, mister. Thompson from across the street offered his security cameras' footage. Doctor, Patterson called to check on us, confirming she'd submitted all medical documentation of my injuries. 17 witnesses. Morrison had said before leaving, in 20 years, I've never seen a community rally like this. The kitchen felt peaceful, no footsteps to fear, no clock watching for 10:17 p.m., no walking on eggshells in our own home. I made Mom tea in her favorite mug, the one Carl had banned because it was too nice for everyday use. Your father would be proud, she said quietly. You protected us both. Dad taught me to document everything, remember? His insurance files were meticulous. He was protecting us even then. She touched the insurance papers that had saved us. Dad's real policies, legitimate and loving, unlike Carl's predatory schemes. And he made sure you'd know how to protect us too. The USB drive sat on the table between us. Such a small thing to bring down Carl's empire of control, but it wasn't really the drive. It was Mrs. Keating's notebooks, Marcus's logs, the neighbors who refused to ignore abuse. It was Samira teaching me forensic accounting over coffee. It was the legal center volunteers who guided me through the system. It was proof that evil thrives in isolation but crumbles under community witness. We're free, Mom said, the word seeming to surprise her. We're free, I confirmed, and for the first time in months, we both actually believed it. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined. 6 weeks after that night with the garlic butter chicken, Carl sat at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit, his lawyer shuffling papers nervously. The man who'd terrorized us for months looked diminished, ordinary, just another criminal facing consequences. Judge Patricia Hoffman reviewed the case with careful attention. The prosecution had charged Carl with 15 counts including assault, elder financial abuse, forgery, fraud, and insurance crimes. His bail had been denied after prosecutors revealed the offshore account searches and $50,000 in cash hidden in his workshop. The evidence is overwhelming. The prosecutor stated, multiple witnesses, video documentation, financial records spanning 3 years, Mr. Benton systematically defrauded his wife of over $200,000 while subjecting his stepdaughter to documented physical assault. Carl's lawyer attempted to argue entrapment, claiming I'd orchestrated the situation. Judge Hoffman's expression could have frozen water. Counselor, are you suggesting the victim orchestrated her own assault? Or that she somehow forced your client to forge signatures and steal hundreds of thousands of dollars? The plea deal came on day 2 of the trial. 20 years for financial crimes, 5 for assault. Sentences to run concurrently with 15 years minimum before parole eligibility. Carl would also face federal insurance fraud charges after state proceedings. But the real victory came from the civil proceedings. The forensic accounting revealed more than we'd known. Carl had stolen closer to $300,000, including Mom's father's inheritance that she'd never even known existed. The judge ordered full restitution plus damages. Mrs. Benton. Judge Hoffman addressed Mom directly. The court recognizes the severe violation of trust you've endured. Your husband used your love and grief against you. This judgment cannot undo that harm, but it can restore what was stolen. The asset recovery was swift. Carl's workshop equipment, his truck, the boat Mom never knew about, all liquidated. The LLC's hidden accounts were drained and returned. Mom recovered not just her money, but something more valuable, her agency. "I want to sell the house," she announced one morning, 3 months after Carl's conviction. "Mom, it's your home." "It was never home with him in it. I want something smaller, closer to you, something that's actually mine." She bought a cottage 6 blocks from my new apartment, walking distance to the job I'd started at Riverside Medical. We painted it together, yellow kitchen, blue bedroom, colors Carl would have forbidden as too cheerful. Mrs. Keating helped her move, bringing housewarming gifts and her protective presence. "You bloom when you're not being crushed," she told Mom. And it was true. Mom started taking pottery classes, joining book clubs, living. The community that had documented our abuse became our extended family. Marcus still did security rounds, but now he waved at us during morning walks instead of midnight crises. Janet delivered mail to Mom's new address with genuine smiles. Dr. Patterson became Mom's primary physician, helping her process the trauma alongside the physical recovery. Samira and I still meet for coffee, though now we discuss normal things: her kids, my patients, vacation plans that don't involve escape strategies. "You saved yourselves," she said once. "The documentation just proved what everyone could see." "Everyone except the person living it," I replied, thinking of how blind we'd been inside Carl's manufactured reality. The insurance policies he'd taken on Mom's life became evidence in federal court. He received an additional 10 years for insurance fraud. Sentences consecutive this time. He'll be nearly 80 when released, if he lives that long. Mom received a letter from him once, forwarded through his lawyer. She burned it unread in her new fireplace, making s'mores over the flames with Mrs. Keating's grandkids. "I don't need to hear anything he has to say," she declared. "That chapter is closed." The restraining order is permanent. Even after his eventual release, Carl can never contact us, come within 1,000 feet, or attempt any communication. The names on Mom's accounts are flagged. Any inquiry triggers law enforcement alerts. But the real protection isn't legal. It's the community that refused to be silent. The neighbors who documented, the professionals who noticed patterns, the friends who taught me to build an airtight case. Evil thrives in darkness and isolation. It withers under witness and solidarity. I still cook in kitchens, my own, Mom's, friends' homes. Every meal is a small rebellion against the man who tried to make food a weapon of control. Mom jokes that my garlic butter chicken should be renamed Liberation Chicken, and maybe she's right. Last week, we hosted Thanksgiving. 17 people crowded into Mom's cottage. Mrs. Keating, Marcus and his family, Samira and her kids, Janet, even Detective Morrison stopped by. We overflowed the kitchen, spilled into the living room, filled the house with the kind of chaos Carl would have forbidden. To freedom. Mom toasted, raising her wine glass, another thing Carl had banned. To documentation, I added, getting laughs. To neighbors who give a damn, Mrs. Keating concluded. Standing in that crowded cottage, surrounded by people who'd stood witness to our worst days and celebrated our liberation, I thought about the night everything changed, how a simple act of cooking dinner had triggered the collapse of years of abuse, how refusing to stay silent had revealed an entire community ready to speak up. Carl took everything he could: money, safety, dignity, peace, but he couldn't take our ability to document, to resist, to survive. And in the end, that USB drive full of evidence mattered less than the 17 witnesses who said, "We see you, we believe you, we're here." The house in Ridgepoint sold last month. The new owners are a young family who love the kitchen. Mom used the proceeds to fund a legal aid program for domestic abuse survivors. Every survivor needs their Samira. She says, their Mrs., Keating, their Marcus, their daughter who refuses to let them disappear into abuse. We're not victims anymore. We're survivors with good credit, stable homes, and kitchens where everyone's welcome. And somewhere in a federal prison, a man who built his kingdom on our suffering is learning what it means to lose everything, not to revenge, but to justice carefully documented and lawfully served. The garlic butter chicken recipe? I make it weekly now. It tastes like freedom. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Please drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Your own experiences and perspectives matter, and together we can build a community that stands witness for those who need it most.